Good afternoon, Your Honor. My name is Adam Newsom, and I am the Assistant Chief from the Fire Department. We're here today to talk about a structure fire that critical evidence was found for an arson case at 614 May Street. At this residence at 614 May Street, the station fire department was dispatched to a first alarm fire, which is 2 engines, a truck company, a rescue company, and a battalion chief. Upon the arrival of the first engine, dense smoke was seen coming from the roof eaves and the roof vents. Crew made their way to the AD corner of the house, the northeast corner, and they forced open the door. Once crews were inside, they noticed that there was minor smoke conditions throughout the house until you got to the living room area. Once in the living room area, it was very dense smoke, black smoke, and near zero visibility, but they could see that the fire was around the TV in the living area. Crews deployed an 1 3/4 attack line and carried the attack line to extinguish the fire in the residence in the living area. At the same time, there was search and rescue going on throughout the rest of the house, looking for victims trapped in the fire or just anyone home at all. Search and rescue was halted or abandoned when the family arrived back to the house and told the incident commander that there was no one home. They had just returned from the store. Incident commander radioed in to search and rescue, and all search and rescue was abandoned. Crew exited the building while a fire attack was still going on. Once the fire was declared under control, crew backed out. Crew started getting the truck ready, back in service, repacking hose, draining the hose, and the lieutenant that was on the first arriving engine was completing the paperwork for his report. Family name, house address, just the regular demographics that we get when we're at structure fires. While the lieutenant was completing his paperwork, a full alarm fire 3 blocks from where they were at was dispatched. It was another structure fire with 3 children trapped inside, and it was only 3 blocks away. Crew quickly finished loading the hose, and the lieutenant got the crews on the trucks, and all trucks left the scene. So when the arson investigator arrived on scene, there was no fire department on scene. The scene had been left unsecure for a very short amount of time due to the fact that there was a full alarm fire dispatched with life-threatening conditions of 3 children trapped inside. Any other time, fire department would have stayed. At least one engine would have stayed to secure the scene until the arson investigator arrived on scene. But with these circumstances, all trucks went, being it was 3 blocks away and there was life-threatening conditions. As you can see in my report, that I was the investigator. When I arrived on scene, the family was gone. There was no one on scene at all. Fire department had already went to the fire. So I started taking photos from the exterior to the interior. With all fire arson investigations or all structure fire investigations, you start the outside, you work your way in. Lots of photos were taken. The family had already left, and I'm guessing they went to their attorney's office, because later they came back while I was still there with their attorney. As I was doing my investigation, once I made it to the interior of the house, something just didn't seem right about the house itself. It looked like personal items, pictures and stuff were missing. The furniture wasn't badly burned. Even in the entire house, there was it was old staged furniture. And the TV that the fire was behind, there was no smoke damage inside the TV or in the vents of the TV or on the screen of the TV, but it was a broken TV. And also, is what I'm using as my evidence today, there was this melted device located behind the TV that caught my eye and made me investigate around the TV a little bit more in depth than I would if I hadn't seen anything. As I was looking for my investigation, I noticed there was a pour pattern from the TV stand living room into the kitchen area. I picked up the particles in the pour pattern, and it was a dust type particle, and I took them, put them in the bag as evidence along with the melted device, and I notified law enforcement that this is going to be an arson case because I had evidence of a device that was melted and a particulate that was a trail from one room to another room. As I was finishing up my interior investigation, still taking some pictures, putting the device into a bag, the homeowners returned with a lawyer and says that my investigation was against their constitutional right and their Fourth Amendment. If you refer back to the case of Michigan versus Tyler, where a furniture store was set fire by the store owners, the fire chief, once it was extinguished, left to get the assistant chief. And because the assistant chief of that fire department was in charge of all investigations for arson. It was a very short, reasonable amount of time because the visibility in the structure at that time, from the steam and the smoke and the heat from the fire, it was not sustainable to do an investigation during that period of time. So once they returned, a very short amount, reasonable amount of time, they started the investigation. In the case, the defendant said the investigation was unconstitutional and against the Fourth Amendment, being that the scene was unsecured and there was no warrant for the investigation. The court determined that a warrantless entry was reasonable and no warrant was needed due to the fact that his furniture store was on fire, and when a structure fire goes out, they have the ability to stay for a reasonable amount of time to extinguish fire, investigate, and take evidence from the fire for arson investigations. Just like ours on 614 May Street, the scene was left unsecured for a very short amount of time due to another fire. Once my investigation started, it was in a reasonable amount of time. They were still fighting the fire 3 blocks away. I could still see the smoke. Very short amount of time because I was en route while they were still there. And once I arrived on scene, nobody was there, but it hadn't been too long after dispatch of the second fire. Being that there was another fire, we didn't leave an engine, so the scene was left unsecure for a short amount of time. Your Honor, I would still like to put the melted device and powder into evidence against this for this case, for an arson case. I want to thank you for your time and have a great afternoon.